Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Harrogate series. Harrogate is a large borough, one of the 11 districts of North Yorkshire. It's got 139 civil parishes. Which one are we in this episode? Welcome back to Harrogate again, everybody. The rain has stopped now. It's the next day. It's very murky at the moment though, because it's really early in the morning. I've got 5 villages to do today, so hopefully I'll get through these as quick as possible. The light will of course eventually get better, he said, hopefully. We're beginning with a very small one today. This one takes its name from the local river. Welcome to the parish of Nidd. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Nidd. Brilliant. No folks, I'm not making that up. This place's name actually means brilliant, or at least that's one theory. There are a couple, but that's the one I like the most. Welcome to Nidd, a village located 3 miles north of Harrogate and just to the east of Ripley. It takes its name from the River Nidd, which forms most of the southern boundary. The name Nidd has some other possible meanings, such as shining or bright, and it's not known with any great certainty which one really applies to the village. The name is almost certainly Celtic. In terms of the river, Nidd means the flowing one. River names were never anything spectacular, it has to be said. So what does this village have? Well, quite a bit actually. Nidd was once the seat of the Rawson family, who in the 19th and early 20th centuries owned the magnificent Nidd Hall, which stood at the centre of a massive 4,000-acre estate. The hall is still very much in use, but these days it's been turned into a hotel. Nidd also has a church dedicated to St Paul and St Margaret, which has a stone monument to the Rawson family. A ways away from the hall and the church, Nidd also has a village hall and several other impressive buildings. There's one row of houses in particular that caught my eye. Let's go and find them and see exactly why they did. We begin on Town Street at the northern end of Nidd village. That's an important fact right off the bat, because Nidd is effectively 2 separate areas of settlement. This northern section is all about 2 major landmarks, the church and Nidd Hall, which are right next door to each other. Importantly for me, there's also a parish notice board, so we'll have that out of the way while we're here too. There are a few scattered houses up here as well, but most of Nidd's population live in the southern section. Nidd's church is dedicated to St Paul and St Margaret. Grade 2 listed, this building has stood tall on this site since 1866. However, Nidd has had previous churches. There's been a place of worship in the village since at least the 13th century. The current building was erected at the expense of the Rawson family, who lived next door in Nidd Hall. The walls of the church are very plain and unplastered, but they do feature memorials to the Rawson family. Also mentioned are the names Butler and Mount Garrett, and Nidd Hall can tell us why. Nidd Hall was once a country house and was built in 1825 for Benjamin Rawson, a businessman with major commercial interests in Bradford. He bought the Nidd estate from Francis Michael Trapps, whose descendants owned and lived in the original Nidd Hall, an Elizabethan mansion built centuries earlier. It would later pass down through marriage to Henry Edmund Butler, the son of Viscount Mountgarret, who in 1891 assumed the surname of Rawson Butler by royal licence. He would greatly enlarge and remodel the hall in the 1890s. The hall is now not lived in by anyone. It's a 4-star hotel operated by Warner Leisure. This is its entrance drive. The hotel has a few unusual features like ranges for things like axe throwing and archery. It's also got 45 acres of grounds, including some award-winning gardens. Now at this point I got a bit lost. I thought I could use these gates to re-emerge onto Town Street, but they aren't in use. So instead I retraced my steps back through the churchyard. It was either that or walk down the entrance drive, but that's a long way. Okay, now there's more to Nidd than just this. If you come to Nidd village, you're likely going to come to the church, to the hall, to everything else that's kind of around it. But there is another part to Nidd village as well. And what we're going to do now is we're going to drive between the two parts. This road that I'm standing on here actually goes underneath the entrance drive to Nidd Hall and brings you out in another separate little bit of the village. Let's get to it. One thing you don't necessarily realise about Nidd is just how big the place actually is if you include all the parkland. At one time, Nidd's estate ran to the phenomenal size of 4,000 acres. It's not anything like as large as that these days, it's now a modest 250 by comparison, but it's still big. Most of what remains is parkland and Town Street passes through it, running underneath the hall's entrance drive to the southern section of the village. You'll note the walls on either side. This is what's known as a sunken road, and it exists thanks to the extension of the park, which took place in 2 stages between 1811 and 1821. OS maps show the expansion to be complete by 1841. During that time, the population of Nidd fell from 120 to 86, and it became a lost village. This is why Nidd is in 2 separate pieces. The land in between was cleared to establish a hunting park and improve privacy. The result is that now, with no new developments, between the two, you have this wonderfully disjointed mess. So what that little drive has done, it's gone underneath the entrance drive to Nidd Hall, and now Nidd Hall, even though it's on this side of the road, as we already know, to get to it you actually have to be on that side of the road, because over there behind these trees is the entrance to it. It goes over this road and then obviously into the hall itself, which you've just seen. Now here, this little cluster of houses is all on the B6165, which we've met a couple of times before, most notably of course in Scotland. There aren't many properties here, there's a few, so we'll take a few shots around here and see what we can learn about this part of the village. Still on Town Street, here's the second of the 2 main areas of settlement. A lot of the houses in both parts of Nidd were at one time part of the estate. Many are now privately owned, but it's pretty easy to tell which ones were built by the Rawsons, Butlers or Mountgarrets. This building is Nidd's old school, but that's as much as I can tell you about it, as I could find no history. It's a private house now. With not much more to see this way, I turned around towards the road that runs along the end of Town Street, the B6165, between Ripley and Scotton. Nidd has no shop or post office, but it does have a post box. That can be found on this junction with another parish notice board. The war memorial is here as well. To go with this, St Paul and St Margaret's Church has a small wooden tablet on its interior wall, remembering those lost in World War I. Let's walk for a short way in either direction along the B6165. This is looking towards Scotton, but we'll go the other way first. In doing so, you can see some of Nidd Hall's parkland, greatly reduced from what it once was, but nice all the same. Where the road bends towards Ripley, there stands the mighty Village Hall and Institute. This was erected in 1898 and features a cute little bell tower that wouldn't look out of place in continental Europe. The hall is no longer used as it was originally intended, and it's now a private house. It seems the locals have an issue with speed along this road. This notice is proof positive of that. The limit here is 40, but perhaps it should be 30 because these bends are sharper than they look. That's it for this direction, so let's turn around. If you go the other way, you'll come face to face with these. Built in 1900 of vibrant red brick, this row of cottages were part of the Nidd Hall estate. They're almshouses, and there were originally 6 of them. However, these days there's 7, because in 1971 they were fully modernised and an extra one was added. I reckon, aside from the hall and the church, the almshouses are Nidd's crowning feature, certainly familiar to anyone who travels regularly along this road. All that's left is this farm on the opposite side, and we are done. Time to move on to the next one. Driving this way out of the village means passing the site of the former Nidd Bridge railway station on the old Leeds to Northallerton line. Next week, we'll be talking about that former line in a bit more detail. In fact, we'll even be walking under it. Come back next Friday to find out where. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.